Knees forwards and away. Like asking one's best friend, not much. Moro tila, yatnena, estena. Knees forwards and away. A few days ago, I didn't have any internet, so I instead of doom scrolling, I picked up a couple of books to read, and I made a point of not using LED light, but rather using the old halogen bulb that I'm using now, because I realised that LED light is that kind of flat, unnatural light is not very good for us. You know, we spend too much time looking at screens, and an old-fashioned light bulb, the same like the light of a candle or the light of the sun or the moon, is more natural, rounded, not such flat light. It's healthier for us. So in the light of the halogen light bulb, I picked up a couple of books. One of them is this one by E.H. Johnston, his translation of Buddhacarita. The first 14 chapters are in Sanskrit, and I've translated those in Asvaghosa's gold. But then there's another 14 chapters for which the Sanskrit is not extant. So E.H. Johnston did a good job of reconstructing it from Tibetan and Chinese. And the particular part that interests me is chapter 26 of Buddhacarita, which is the Mahaparinirvana, which contains the Chinese rendering of the 8 thoughts of a great person, and it corresponds. Obviously, it's exactly where it's exactly the source of the 8 thoughts of a great person in Shobogenzo. Genzo. The metaphors are the same. So I read that, and one of the things that struck me in going back to it and reading it again was that the Buddha said that after his death, the Pratimoksa should be we should take the Pratimoksa as our acharya, our instructor. And where does he say it? Anyway, so the Buddha says to recite, he tells the bhikkhus to carry on reciting the Pratimoksa as they did in his lifetime. And in Theravada traditions, they do carrying out that instruction to the letter by reciting the precepts for bhikkhus. I think every couple of weeks they get together and recite those. Now that isn't something which is it's not something which I've obviously practiced. But when you think of the word Pratimoksa, what it actually means is prati means towards, and moksha is liberation. And what's happened in my practice is that the 8 thoughts of a great person have turned into my Pratimoksa. I recite them regularly and regard them as my teacher, actually. So I kind of took encouragement from that. The Buddha said to take the Pratimoksa after his death, that they should be our teacher. Then the other book which I read is The Collapse of Antiquity by Michael Hudson, and it's a lengthy tome, and a lot of it I find hard going, the middle parts, which is where he gives all the evidence for his thesis. But his basic thesis is in his preface and introduction, which you can probably, if you go on Amazon and sort of do the look inside function, you can probably read most of the preface and the introduction, which he states his thesis, which I find very convincing, which is the real history of, to understand what's going on in the world now, it's useful to understand the history of antiquity in Greece and Rome in particular. And the version of history that we're taught is all about the sort of the emperor going out and conquering barbarians and so on. But the history which we aren't taught, which the Roman historians themselves discussed more, is more the internal conflict between the emperor, or the would-be emperor, the would-be king, what was called the tyrant, was denigrated as the tyrant, and these powerful oligarchical families in Rome. And Hudson basically describes hundreds of years of civil war between, as people protested against the power of these oligarchical families. And behind it is the privilege which accrues to anybody who is able to lend money. So there's an economist called Richard Werner, who I admire very much, and he explains that the kind of theories of money creation which we're taught at university and school are basically lies to cover up what really happens is that when money is created simply by banks making loans. So banks have got this incredible privilege. They can conjure money out of thin air, and it gives them tremendous power. That's how they control governments and control the media. They have this tremendous power just to make a loan, and that's how they create money. And thus it ever was. So but Hudson explains that before the Greek and Roman Empire, in the Middle East, in the Near East, when a new king came to the throne, they would create a debt jubilee. They just cancel out all debts, because debts were basically debts to the crown. And so this kind of restored balance to the economy. But in Greece and Rome, property rights were made more sacrosanct. So debt forgiveness was not practiced. And what that enabled these powerful oligarchs to do is to monopolise more and more wealth in their own hands. So the one thing that can restore balance is somebody above the oligarchical families in power, and that would be in Rome. It would have been like Caesar, the so-called tyrant, as it was in ancient antiquity. He says, if you had one all-powerful ruler, he could cancel out the debts. But if you didn't have a guy above the oligarchs, you would basically get these oligarchs concentrating more and more power in their own hands. And that's precisely what's going on now. So it's these powerful banking cartel, these powerful oligarchical families against the rest of humanity, basically. That's World War III going on now. And so there's a kind of paradox there, and it struck me as I was reading these two accounts, which seemed to me to be true. The Buddha saying, you know, rather than look for the great teacher who's going to be the saviour, make the Pratimoksa into your teacher. And for me, the Pratimoksa will be the eight truths of a great person, the rules, the precepts leading towards liberation, leading in the end towards prapancha upashamaha, the melting away of othering. That othering, of course, being the cornerstone of the oligarchs who would use divide and rule to separate the plebs and keep them fighting, keep them divided by fighting about this and that, instead of seeing what's really going on and turning against the powers that be, these oligarchical structures. I mean, what's going on in Ukraine now is a perfect example of how the craven media, exemplified by the BBC, is othering Russia, othering Putin, trying to convince us all that we need to make sacrifices, you know, to support democracy in Ukraine, and everybody can see it's bullshit. And hence we're it's like we're approaching end times, because more and more of us can see through the lies, and the liars are getting more and more desperate. So in that situation, it's both Muslim eschatology and Buddhist eschatology, which I haven't studied in detail, but I get the impression that, see, there's the prophecy of Maitreya, and similarly in Muslim eschatology, there's it seems there's a prophecy that Jesus was a kind of first Messiah, and there will be a second Messiah, and so it does seem that we do require. See, some anarchists would refute the idea that one king, one authoritarian leader, would come in and save the day. But anarchism is just another ism to be abandoned. So we have to consider, in light of emptiness, everything is possible, everything is workable. And so it may be a case in which, following the Pratimoksa, the 8 thoughts of a great person, if the teaching of emptiness, the melting away of othering, becomes better established, there may be a sense in which that lays the ground for some kind of philosopher king, a Maitreya, a second Messiah, to help reset the system, not in the way of the WEF, World Economic Forum, Great Reset, in which the oligarchs get all the power, but on the contrary, a greater reset in which those oligarchs are forced to relinquish their power as people understand what's going on in terms of money creation and debt. Now, Richard Werner looks forward to a time where instead of banking being more and more centralised, what we need is lots of small, local, regional banks. See, in light of emptiness, it's not that money or credit per se is bad. See, people say that really money is gold. Legally, gold is money. That's been true since, that's enshrined in Roman law as well. Gold is money. But, so J.P. Morgan famously said, great banker of the end of the 19th century, gold is money, the rest is credit. But so banks' ability to make loans and in that way to conjure money out of thin air, money as credit. They can't conjure gold out of thin air, but they can conjure dollars or pounds out of thin air just by making loans. In light of emptiness, credit is not, making money like that, creating money like that is not necessarily bad. It's what happened in the economic miracles of post-war Germany and post-war Japan, where you had many small, local, regional banks kind of kicking the tires and making loans to people who had high productivity. Had made real contributions, small businesses making real contributions to local economies. That was how banking should work. But gradually, big banks, just like in the days of the Roman Empire, big banks controlled by these oligarchs monopolised, centralised more and more power. So the big banks then lend to big corporations, and gradually small businesses suffer, and you get more and more power centralised and concentrated in these hands of people who are not doing a good job in serving others. The big corporations, they're as they've shown, like Big Pharma, they just put serving their oligarchical masters above providing good services for the people. Now, as we've been looking at those 9 verses in Shikarini Mita, plus the one in Atidhṛti Mita at the end of Saundarananda Canto 16, I'll finish off this little reflection by reciting that verse in Atidhṛti Mita at the end of Canto 16 and seeing what it might suggest against the background of what Michael Hudson wrote and what E.H. Johnston translated. So the verse is kṛṣṭvā paripālya śrama-śatair aśnoti sasya-śriyaṁ. kṛṣṭvā, ploughing the earth, digging the earth, paripālya, and protecting it, śrama-śatair, with 100 or with 1,000 pains. Aśnoti, he attains. Sasya-śriyaṁ, a bounty of grain. Yatnena pravigāhya sāgara-jalaṁ ratna-śriyā narendra-śriyā krīḍati, yatnena, with effort, pravigāhya, diving into, sāgara-jalaṁ, the waters of the ocean, ratna, treasure, śriyā krīḍati, he revels in a bounty. He revels in a bounty of corals and pearls by making effort to dive into the ocean's waters. Now this is the interesting one. śatrūṇām avadhūya vīryam iṣubhir bhuṅkte narendra-śriyaṁ. śatrūṇām, rivals, usurpers. avadhūya, shaking off, seeing off. vīryam, the effort. So by seeing off the effort of usurpers, śatrūṇām avadhūya vīryam iṣubhir, with arrows. Iṣubhir means with arrows, but ishu also means 5. So in the hidden meaning, I understand this with the 5 arrows is panchabala, the 5 strengths, and panchendriya, the 5 powers, which I can't remember what they are offhand. But with those 5, they're the same. They're the same 5. The Buddha enumerated them as part of the 37 things on the side of awakening. So śatrūṇām avadhūya vīryam iṣubhir bhuṅkte narendra-śriyaṁ. Bhuṅkte, he enjoys. Narendra means nara, men, indra, the leader, the best among. śriyaṁ, sovereignty. So he's talking ostensibly about a king who sees off the endeavour of rivals or usurpers, using the 5 arrows or using the 5 powers. And in that way he enjoys royal sovereignty. So I've long thought that has a hidden meaning, that he, well, let's be honest, I sort of regard it as autobiographical, except that I didn't shake off. I failed to shake off the endeavours of usurpers. That's the truth. That's why I didn't become the successor of Gudo Nishijima. His idea for me was that I would be his successor, and it didn't happen. Partly my fault, because the effort I made was not the right kind of effort, and partly his fault because he didn't understand emptiness. Between the two of us, we didn't accomplish what we could have accomplished. So it's interesting in light of what Michael Hudson said. What the Buddha's kind of suggesting there, see, narendra-śriyaṁ, the sovereignty of the best of men. That would be the what would be enjoyed by the Buddhist patriarchs, really, like Master Bodhidharma, Master Tendo Nyojo, Master Dogen, Master Taisoeka, Nagarjuna, Asvaghosa, the Buddha himself. There's this lineage of Zen patriarchs, and Nishijima Sensei's definitely had the idea. What was important to him was establishing his successor, somebody who would carry on his idea. But there was a fault in that, because not what he should have aimed at, was that his idea would stay on the globe, his idea of the four philosophies, etc. The Pratimoksa is what the Buddha wanted to stay on the face of the earth, with the Pratimoksa, the precepts, the rules, the discipline, leading people to liberation. And Nishijima Sensei's own idea of the four philosophies is a different thing. But the point is that there was this underlying thrust of Nishijima Sensei's effort was to establish his true successor, kind of like a philosopher king. And seeing as he met me when I was still only 22 and seemingly had a lot of potential, that's what he hoped I would be. It didn't happen, but it's instructive, and it relates, you see, to this verse. I think the hidden meaning, the Buddha, in Asvaghosa's words, is kind of pointing to this possibility of some kind of philosopher king who can shake off the usurpers. And the usurpers would be these oligarchical families, who of course have got their agents everywhere in all things. So, for example, if you take three stooges of the British establishment, whose photo, if you go on YouTube and look at Christmas Humphreys, you'll find an audio book of his book on Zen, and the photo for it is from left to right: Alan Watts, D.T. Suzuki, and Christmas Humphreys. And those guys are three stooges of the British establishment, whose function was to confuse emptiness, or the teaching of Zen, and nihilism. So emptiness is the antidote to all isms: realism, nihilism, socialism. Emptiness is the antidote. Shunyata sarva-rddhayaḥ. Bhuṅkte nisaranam jinai. So, shunyata, emptiness; sarva-rddhayaḥ, all isms, all views, all ways of seeing. Bhuṅkte was proclaimed. Nisaranam, the antidote, the remedy to get rid of. Jinai, by the victors. So emptiness is or was proclaimed by the victors as the remedy to get rid of all isms, including nihilism. But the British establishment early on intervened to confound everything, to confuse the teaching of the Buddha's teaching as transmitted by the Zen patriarchs. That they confused they intervened to confuse Nagarjuna's teaching of emptiness with nihilism. And what the British are very good is co-opting, you see. So like if someone like David Icke, for example, who I think is an agent of the British establishment, he's said a lot of things which are very prescient and very true. But the most important thing he says is like it's all a simulation. It's like the Matrix. So it's a nihilistic approach. And when nihilism is prevailing in the culture, the people are weak, and that's what the establishment want. They don't want strong people who will oppose them. They want weak people who they can control. So that's Alan Watt. Sometimes I see on Facebook that people who follow me or I befriended, they quote stuff from Alan Watts, you see, because Alan Watts said some good things, but his basic thrust was nihilistic, he's drinking alcohol, sleeping with his students, and yet people think he's some kind of great Zen guru. That's the skill of the British establishment traditionally for co-opting things. And then people like Shunryu Suzuki say that Alan Watts is a great bodhisattva. No, that's because he didn't have any eyes of his own, he would say that. You see, the British establishment, in its own way, infiltrated everything to do with Japan. The story is that the American gunboat is what the American gunboat Commodore Perry sort of triggered the Meiji Reformation. But the British way, the usual British way, is to hide behind America. Back in 1869, when that happened, America wasn't the power in the world; it was the British Empire still. And so the powerful British banking families, well, they're really transnational. It's the transnational oligarchy is what's controlling things. But a lot of it has its roots in the British Empire, and they've been very good at using camouflage and decoys and not letting people understand what's really going on. So śatrūṇām avadhūya vīryam iṣubhir bhuṅkte narendra-śriyāṁ. So what we really need is somebody who can see off or shake off those very skillful endeavours of the usurping oligarchs and enjoy sovereignty. Enjoy the sovereignty of Narendra, the best of men, which of course in Asvaghosa's writing, when he writes about Narendra, he's talking about an emperor or the Buddha's father, the king. But in the hidden meaning, when he describes the virtues of Narendra, a best of men, he's actually talking about the virtues of the Buddha. So what we really want is a person with political influence, not only the wisdom of emptiness, the wisdom of not othering, but actually political power. See, Jesus, when not the British Empire, but the Roman oligarchs co-opted Jesus' teaching, Hudson kind of argues or shows that it was through Saint Augustine specifically. Saint Augustine was co-opted by the oligarchs, and so whereas Jesus was very much concerned with debt forgiveness, he could see how much suffering was being caused by these oligarchs with their lending practices. And in the Lord's Prayer, according to Hudson, what Jesus was saying was, forgive them their debts. But under the influence of St. Augustine, as bagman for the oligarchs, that got changed into forgive us our trespasses. And especially we had to focus on sexual sin, original sin. So that's how these people have been working for thousands of years, since the Roman Empire. Because their ability to create money out of thin air gives them such power that they're able to co-opt the media, religious institutions, and what they're afraid of is the truth being known, and then the people who know the truth opposing them. And their usual method, when such people seem to be a threat, is straight away assassination. So if you look at Shinzo Abe in Japan, he was talking about rapprochement with Russia, Japan's rapprochement with Russia. So boom, he was taken out. The most spectacular example I've come across is Alfred Herrhausen, who was the CEO of Deutsche Bank at the end of the 1980s. And as the Soviet Union crumbled, he recognised that the best way to help humanity in Eastern Europe was debt forgiveness. So he was assassinated, ostensibly by the Red Army, but of course it would have been MI6 behind it all, or the CIA, which are basically one network. Jesus, of course, is the same example. If you understand that he was speaking out for debt forgiveness, there would be the reason for taking him out, and also this sort of denigrating of him, ironically, as the king of the Jews. You see that the oligarchs fear a king above them, somebody who's got sovereignty. And the nearest thing to that in modern history would have been an American president who would stand up to British colonialism. In that light can be understood assassinations in American politics, like JFK most recently. Tad vīryam kuru śāntaye viniyataṁ vīrye sarva-rddhayaḥ. So this is the last line of the most important canto of Saundarananda, the Buddha's conclusion to his elucidation of the Four Noble Truths, is this line: Tad, so, vīryam, effort, kuru, make, śāntaye, in the direction of peace. But particularly the verb sham, the verbal root sham, as we've seen in the gold mining metaphor, where it means to cause to melt, shamayati means to cause to melt, has a connotation of melting or softening. And it relates to Nagarjuna's phrase, prapanch-upashamam shivam, the bliss, the happiness of melting away of prapancha, othering. So on an individual level, the Buddha's saying, for example, by making the Pratimoksa of the 8 thoughts of a great person, by making them your teacher, they will lead us in the direction of prapanch-upashamam, the melting away of othering. But if we're talking at the macro level, what we're working towards is peace, shanti, which means a softened situation, a situation where the world is no longer divided by these hard and fast divisions between left and right, this ism and that ism. So included in that kind of macro effort really is laying the ground for a Maitreya, for the realization of these end times prophecies of a Maitreya, or in Muslim eschatology also, somebody who is going to shake off usurpers. The oligarchs are basically usurpers of control over humanity. Control over humanity does not belong lawfully to them. We need a lawful leader, a person who's got lawful sovereignty, and that might be an American president, except that the Brits, through the intelligence networks, have usurped control over America. And against that, in that background, you can see America, through the Biden administration now, is acting against its own best interests, with the border, with all the money going to Ukraine and so on. The Biden administration is serving as did perhaps all administrations since the assassination of JFK. They're serving this transnational oligarchy. They're not serving their own people. They're not serving humanity. So śatrūṇām avadhūya vīryam iṣubhir bhuṅkte narendra-śriyaṁ. So somebody needs to enjoy the sovereignty of a true leader of men, a true king, and with the five arrows, which were the five panchabala, panchendriya. Shake off the efforts, those so skillful, well established over the centuries efforts of the transnational oligarchs, rooted very much in the city of London. So, tad vīryam kuru śāntaye. So make an effort in the direction of peace. What can we do individually? Well, we can recite the 8 thoughts of a great person. That's individually how we go in the direction of prapanchopashama, the happiness of the melting away of othering. Vasan shunyagare yadi satatame ko biramate. Abiding in an empty place, if one loves ever to be one. That's the individual effort we can make. But then I think the Buddha's also kind of suggesting by making that individual effort, we can sort of lay the ground for some kind of a political step in the right direction. Tad vīryam kuru śāntaye. So make an effort in pursuit of peace, in the direction of peace. Viniyataṁ, assuredly. Vīrye, in effort. Sarva-rddhayaḥ, all kinds of prosperity. Sarva-rddhayaḥ means all, it's plural, rddhayaḥ means prosperities or growths, so all kind of growth, all kind of prosperity. Vīrye is in effort. So in light of emptiness, it's not a question of praying for Maitreya to come and save us. Somehow we've got to find a way that each of us, in our own small way, can make an effort in that direction.